friends, happy Wednesday and welcome back to Adobe Live for this week's Pro Tips segment in Photoshop. Really excited to talk about gradients. There is a new gradient tool in Photoshop that I have personally been utilizing to elevate the backgrounds of my portraits. So I'm really excited to show y'all how we're going to do that today. Go ahead and drop in the chat where you are joining us from. Hello to everyone already in the chat. Really excited to see y'all. So let's go ahead and just go straight to my screen because we only got about 25 minutes and I want to make sure I give y'all enough content and information that you can utilize for your future portraits. So I have some different shots here. I have a self-portrait and I actually have some shots that I took yesterday in the studio with a friend. So we're gonna have some different examples of how we can utilize this gradient tool to our advantage. So I took the self-portrait in my garage, okay? And I felt like the white backdrop, the white wall, wasn't really given. It wasn't doing anything for this photo. So I was really interested to see how can I elevate it, change the color, and kind of see what my options are. So we're gonna go ahead and just talk a little bit about the gradient tool. Now, this image as well does not have any color grading to it. I did do some color adjustments, but I've not graded the photo yet, so you won't see the final image. If we have time, maybe I'll do some extra editing, but I really want to make sure I talk a lot about this gradient tool in Photoshop and how you can utilize it. So you'll see here on the left hand side of my screen, if you hover over it, you'll see the gradient tool. So it's going to help you create a blend of different colors, and you can actually create different types of gradients now. So if you look up here at the top, you'll see a linear gradient, there's a radial gradient, angle gradient, reflected gradient, and diamond gradient. So a couple of different options that we can utilize. Of course, we have, some same gradients that are already in here that we can utilize. Of course, we can make adjustments, which we'll talk about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So because I'm adding this gradient to the background of my image, I want to separate my subject, which is myself, from the background. And I'm going to do that by creating just selecting the subject and inversing the selection to just focus on the background. So Photoshop makes it really easy, especially with this whole, as you can see here, with this option here to select subject. So I'm going to click select subject, and it's going to go ahead and make a selection of me. And I think it did a pretty good job. And for the purpose of this video, I won't go in and do some feathering and just for the purpose of time, I'm not going to go in and do some additional feathering. I'm just going to trust what we have here as our selection. I am going to inverse the selection so that way I can just be focused on the background, because we are going to add this gradient just to the background of this portrait. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-I if you are on a Mac. If you're on a PC, I'm so sorry. I do not know what to tell you. If you know in this chat what the quick step is to inverse a selection, please put so in the chat for those that are non-Mac users. But I made the selection there. I'm going to make sure that my gradient tool is highlighted. Let's see, for starters, I think I'm going to start with this gradient that's already selected, and we'll talk about how you can adjust the gradient as well. So we have different options here. There is the linear gradient that we talked about. I really like this radial gradient, so I'm going to utilize that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the center, and I'm going to click and pull out. And as the further I'm pulling out, you guys are seeing that gradient is becoming more and more present. So that blue to purple gradient going on the outside. So I'm going to just pull it out to the corner of my image there, just so I can see the gradient fully, right? Let's see, Control-Alt-I, yes. So thank y'all so much for putting those options in there. I want to make sure we are being as inclusive as we can with Mac and non-Mac or PC users. So thank y'all so much for that. But so now we have this gradient here, a radial gradient. If I wanted to, let's say I felt like the blue was a little bit too much and I wanted to pull back, you'll see the center selection here. If I click on it and drag down and up, you can see I can kind of control how much of that radial is present in the photo. So I can decrease it, increase it, whatever I may feel is necessary or best for this photo. Now, this is a little bit too much for me. What I would do personally, if I was shooting or if I was editing this photos, I would decrease the opacity a little bit, maybe decrease the fill so it felt a little bit more natural to the photo. But for the purpose of seeing everything in this image and seeing how these are impacting our backgrounds, we're going to keep the opacity up, keep the fill up, so that way we can see everything. Now, let's say I wanted to change a color. Let's say I felt like this pink was doing a little too much. I'm gonna go ahead and double click on the pink out here, this little circle that you can see. If I had a color I wanted to pick on, let's say if I wanted to go from that blue that we currently have to like a darker blue that matches the color of this dress, of the sleeves of the dress, I can just click on that and bam, it just switches and creates that gradient. Now again, if I clicked OK and I felt like this blue was too much, I could pull back so I can see more of that darker blue on the outside of the portrait. Same thing here. If I felt like this shade of blue wasn't really doing it for me and I wanted to change that, I can come here and use my color picker if I need to, if there was a color I wanted to grab from the photo, or I can just kind of go around and play around and see what color I really like. Ooh, that's nice. It's kind of similar though. Let's see. So we're just gonna play around and just kind of see where we're gonna fall. Let's go there. Okay, so then now you can see again, how less do I want there? So that is one option there. Let's say I also felt like, oh, I want this to go from, instead of it being just blue, like a light blue to a darker blue, maybe I want it to be like a light blue to a transparent feel. I'm gonna go ahead and double click on this box here, on my mask over here, and it's going to bring up this box for me. I'm going to click on the color, and we know the gradient editor, that is not new to Photoshop. So in this space, I want to focus on how can I create more of a like fall off of that middle color. Maybe I don't want that dark blue on the outside edge of my image, right? So I'm going to go ahead and come here. You can also see that if I wanted to adjust, sorry, hold on. If I wanted to adjust any of these colors, I could click and do so, but I'm going to come here to the black that's here. The opacity is at 100. If I just brought that down to 0, then you'll see how that's going to fade out and be transparent. And if we looked at the before and after, it's again just focusing on that radial in the center, and then because the background was already white, it's fading out to the white that we already had in this portrait. So that is the before, and that is the after. But if I felt like I really wanted to keep that color in there, I could do that as well. The other cool thing that I really love is that you can also change in between the different types of gradients. So maybe I felt like this was not going to be a radial gradient. Maybe I wasn't really feeling the vibe. I can go ahead and click on my linear gradient, and it's just going to change that for me immediately. So it's going to keep the same settings, the same colors, and just kind of change it and adjust it for whatever gradient I'm working on. So same thing here. If I felt like this blue was too much and maybe I wanted to bring it out more, if I wanted more of a gradient, I wanted to bring it down less, I could do that. If I felt like the purple, I wanted to bring it in a bit more, I could do that, or just kind of play around and adjust with how much I want present, or how I want the gradient to fall in this portrait. So I really like the way that looks. And then the other options here, I personally for portraits have used just the radial and linear gradients, but you can also utilize like angle gradients if you wanted to use that, and these other options as well. And it stays relatively the same in regards to the opportunity to change the different colors, impact how much of that gradient you want present, how powerful you want it. You can just kind of play around the sliders in that sense. So I'm gonna put this back on the radial gradient because I really loved how that looked on the portrait. I'll pull this down. I like that color right now, but again, it's a little too much for me. So I'm gonna pull back on the fill and opacity just a wee bit. And I just feel like that's like a nice soft, yeah, that's nice. So that's our before and that's our after. And I feel like it adds a little bit more personality to the photo. It adds a little bit more color. The white just felt very bright, and I don't know, it just wasn't doing anything for me for this portrait. So adding this gradient just kind of elevates the background, elevates the color. And then if I wanted to, on top of this, kind of go into my selective color and start actually color grading my image, I could. So we're gonna go ahead and go into this a little bit just to see what we can kind of come up with as a final image. And then we're gonna try gradients on some other images as well. So I'm gonna come in here. I usually start with reds, and the only kind of reds, when I'm focusing on reds and yellows, it's for the skin tone. So my skin, getting it to a tone or color that I like, which I'm not gonna make much adjustments there because I think it's pretty fine. Blue cyan, I can come in here. This is gonna impact the colors of my gradient as well if I felt like I wanted to change that. And you can see, hopefully you can see as I'm pulling back and forth how it is making the cyans a little bit darker, adding more blacks, removing the blacks, whatever I wanted to do, adding the magentas, and just another way to impact the color a little bit further. And if y'all have any questions, I am looking at the chat, so please feel free to drop some questions in the chat. That way I can answer them as they come up. I'm gonna go to my blues, see what I have in here. Ooh, are we filling a purple? Ooh, I don't know. I don't know. See, this is what I love about Celeste. Ooh, sorry. I like that shade of blue right there. So I think I'm going to stay in that kind of family of blue. That's really nice. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to create another layer for selective color. Come down to my whites, see if there's anything. There's a little bit of whites in the background. See if I can tone that a little bit. And again, I just like to do this to just kind of now, especially now that I've added some color into my background, I can utilize the selective color tool to really impact that color further. If it was just white, the only color that I could really, the only selective color that I could use would be my whites to really hopefully add a little bit of tones into the backdrop. But now that I've added that gradient, I have a little bit more control on how I can really work to edit my portrait. And I can just kind of mess around here, add some final toning into the image, and just do whatever I felt was right. If I felt like that was too much, sometimes I love to play around with the opacity and fill just because it lets me kind of control how much of that selective color is present. If I feel like it's a little bit too much, then I will pull back. But sometimes it's fine to keep as it is at the full capacity or full opacity, full fill, but sometimes I want to adjust that. So I think I'm going to stop there. So I'm going to pull back so you guys can see where we came from. So this was our before. Again, the only thing that I had on this image is that I did do some slight color adjustments just to get my white balance where I wanted it, contrast, etc. I did also use the generative fill option to fill up the sleeves just because I just didn't like the way that those little openings look. So we've added that. We've added our gradient to the background and then our selective color to help tone the gradient and also tone the overall image. So this is kind of like not a finished image because I would have gone in and done some skin retouching and probably toned it a little further. But this is just how we've utilized a number of different tools in Photoshop, combine them and just see how we can just strengthen our editing, our color grading for our images. So I hope y'all like that example. I'm really excited because I want to go into another portrait real quickly. We have still some time left, so I think we can kind of edit this photo together. So I'm going to start with using a number of different tools. I'm going to start with the background. So I do want to fill the background of this image because we want the whole thing to be red. I took this photo from like a lower angle, knowing that I was going to capture all of this in the background, but it's fine because I know I can use Generative Fill to just expand and fill up that space. And then if I wanted to expand the background more, I can use Generative Expand to do that. So we're generating. Let's see what we get here. Oh, moment of silence for Photoshop. I have to clap because that was just so beautiful. So well done. If I wanted to look at the other variations, I could. I do like how I add like some darker tones at the top, bringing in some more focus on the subject. So whichever one I kind of prefer, I could utilize. I like that first one. I think I'm gonna keep it there. So I like that. I am gonna merge these two together to keep everything on one layer. So I'm gonna right click, merge layers. And then I am gonna expand this out a little bit further. Oh, actually, let me hold my shift key down so it keeps my dimensions relatively together. I want to keep my subject in the center like that. Then I'm going to press generate, excuse me. And we're going to see what that does to the background. It's working. And let's see. Ooh. Bingo, perfect. So then there we go. That is our before of what we had. And with the generative fill and generative expand, we've just expanded our background out. And I'm gonna, again, merge these into one layer just because I'm not planning to go back and make any edits to the expanding that we did and the filling that we did. I'm pretty happy with what this looks like right now. So now I'm gonna go ahead and let's focus on the background, right? So I'm gonna go ahead like we were doing before. Ooh, let's see, I'm gonna click here so I can bring up my select subject tool. So it's gonna go ahead and make a selection of my subject, which it did a pretty good job there. Let me I think it's Command Shift I to inverse it. And then I'm gonna click on my gradient tool here. And I think, let's see, so I usually like to start off with what Photoshop has in here for different color combinations to see if there's anything that I feel like is gonna be inspiring to me for the photo that I'm working on. I could always, of course, go back and change anything, but I just like to use the gradients that are already in here just as a start. And then I kind of, change it up from there. So I think we're gonna stay with the reds because, the background is red. I like this kind of peach to red moment. Let's try a linear gradient. So I'm gonna pull this out. Ooh, okay. Should I pull this out more? Yeah, let that fade in. I'm gonna darken this, bring down the opacity and bring down the fill quite a bit, just so I can have it kind of blend in a bit more with the actual background that I had. And I can see here, I can lift. I feel like if I leave it there in the center, it's like a direct, like clean, like mark, which I don't want. I want it to feel like it's fading into that color a bit more. So I can do that. If I felt like the color wasn't really cool, maybe I didn't like this pink, I want it to be more of a red, I can come in here and change and pick what colors I feel are more appropriate for this gradient, for this portrait. I'm gonna play around with that a little bit. Ooh, that's nice. Do I like that or do I want to go more red? Let's see. Okay, let's go back to this first one. Again, I'm just playing around with the colors, and really I had no vision for this photo as far as what I wanted to do with the gradient in the background. I just wanted to see what kind of options do I have. Let's do that kind of lighter pinkish tone. Again, if I felt like it was too much and I wanted to pull back, I could bring down the opacity a bit so I can bring in that background. But that's our before and that is our after. So I really like the overall toning it's done to the image. If I felt like maybe a radial gradient was better, I could play around and see if any of these other gradients are speaking to me. But I really like the linear gradient that we had there and just how the color is falling off. Let's see, maybe actually, let's see if I can differentiate the colors a little bit more. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So like we were talking about before, if I wanted to make it transparent, I could, but I'm going to leave this as it is. So that is our before and that is our after. Then I'm going to come into selective color and just see what can I do here to kind of enhance it a little bit further. So I can add some cyans, remove some cyans, play around with the overall color and feel of this backdrop. We'll make it a little bit more red. Again, you can still see that that gradient is present. Even though it's changing the overall tones, I can still see that it's like a lighter red falling into this deeper red. So I could play around with that a little bit further to just see what my options are. And this is the great part about just creativity as a whole, is that you can there's no right or wrong answer. You can just play around with the colors, see what you like, don't like. And I just really love how much control we have, and then how well these tools really work together ultimately to really enhance your photos and your backdrops. So let's see, let's do that. That's the before. So that's without the gradient, that's with the gradient, and that is with some selective color on top of it. Again, let's come back to this gradient. Maybe I want to change this. Let's see. So you can see here, if I change it to the color, you can see how it's changing. Hopefully you guys can see on your screens the differences with these colors. You see, if I bring in a little green, ooh, that's actually really nice. Oh, we may have done something. And I actually really love this too, because I personally don't shoot with gels yet as a photographer. And I've been wanting to play around with some gels and seeing how I can, incorporate different colors into my photos. But I love this as a great option to just be able to like, hold on, let me remove that. I love this as a great option to really play around with my photos and my backdrops and kind of add colors and have a little bit more control of what that looks like. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that don't think I've covered so far is if you wanted to add any other colors in here, you could just click on, I believe you can just, hold on, oh, there we go. So if I just click, it added another circle in there. And then here I could add another tone if I felt like it was necessary to have kind of like a 3-tone gradient. I don't want that for this. I kind of like the 2. I feel like it keeps it still natural, but you could add or remove or do whatever you felt was necessary. So I really like, let's see. Yeah, I really like the way that that looks. And then of course I would clean up the portrait and whatnot. But again, this is the before, that's with the gradient, and that is with some selective color on there. And then if I wanted to come in and continue to do some color grading, as I always do, I could tone my whites, which the only whites that there really are in this photo are the whites in her outfit. Shout out to H&M. I went to H&M to pick up the outfit, and I think it really paired nicely with this backdrop. So I could play around with that, add some neutrals to see what that kind of does with the overall toning. I want to be careful. I would, also as I'm doing all of this, you guys can see how it's impacting her skin tones. I would separate her skin and, you know, create a different layer for that. So that way these colors wouldn't be impacting that. Ooh, that's nice. Okay, cool. And then let's go into our blacks as well. And just see what that looks like. I always, when I come in with my blacks, I usually like to lower the opacity of this layer just so it doesn't feel so like bam in your face, but you can still see those added colors to the shadows of your portrait. So let's see. Maybe I don't like this green anymore. I thought I did. Ooh, yeah, let's bring it more to like a yellow, like a more of a like added like sunset feel to the photo. Yeah, I think I like that better. And I think I want to change this top color to something a little bit, let's see. Let's see, maybe I want to come. We're just gonna see where this falls into. I think I like that. So that is honestly so nice. Okay, so I'm gonna group everything. I'm gonna group the selective color together so we can see what all of these different adjustments look like. So again, we did do some generative fill, generative expand, so that way we can clean up this backdrop, take all of this excess out of the photo, as well as expand our backdrop out so it just feels like we had more space than we actually did. And then I added the gradient in there. You can see how the color impacted the backdrop. Again, that's the before and after, and you can see how that gradient is kind of shifting from the left side of the photo, the left side, upper hand side, down into the bottom, and just kind of blending that all out. Again, if I wanted to change the direction of my gradient as well, I could do that if I felt like maybe I want the color to come from this side, or maybe I want it to be like a left to right situation, or whatever the case might be. I could impact that too. So you can rotate your gradients to kind of play around with that as well. And then we did some color adjustments. So I did go into selective color to just enhance it a bit further and just see what those options look like. And I just feel like this compared to just that adds so much more depth and color. Like even just look at, just look at it. Look at the material and tell me we didn't just eat with this. Like, look at the material, y'all. I'm so excited. This is such a great tool. I had some other images here, but they're from the same set. We don't have much time left. We should be, let me see if I can quickly see how this looks on another white background. So let's see. Inverse, let's create a separate layer mask. Ooh, I didn't want to do that. Okay, hold on. Oh, okay, let's try that again. So let's do select inverse. And then again, if I wanted to add the gradient, I can decrease it to see how that color. Now, of course, you can see in here, the mask, I would have to come in here and like clean up the mask a bit more. just because you could see in her hair the white that's still there. But again, you can play around with the different types of gradients and see how they impact your photos. And I really hope that you guys just see how you can use this tool to really impact your backdrops, impact the way your photos look. I just feel like it's just a great added element. So again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please reach out, let me know. But please, 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 I would love to see y'all utilize this gradient tool in your future portraits. And if you do, let me know, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.